in urban areas are actually more developed, more qualified to access jobs, and those that cannot access the jobs in the urban areas, they're actually people that lack the qualifications. Now, the question that we pose for team opposition is the fact that why do you think people do not actually have the qualifications to access these jobs in urban areas? Now, the answer is one. The fact that people don't have the qualifications is because they're neglected in the rural areas where they migrate to the urban areas to get their jobs, because someone will realize that there are job opportunities in urban areas and they will go there. But what happens? They do not have the qualifications to get these jobs. Why? Because where they come from, the education systems are very poor, so at the end of the day, even when they migrate to urban areas, they'll fail to access these jobs at the end of the day because they do not have access to quality educations to have qualifications for these jobs at the end of the day. Now, they come on and emphasize the fact that actually government has the capacity to develop the urban areas better, and actually people continue to live in urban areas. But we keep on emphasizing the question that, I will not take it right now. We continue to emphasize the question that would this exacerbate actually the rural-urban migration that they're talking about? Because in their case, they keep on emphasizing the need to develop urban areas so that people can live in comfortable lives, which is very true. This is a very good model. However, have you considered the fact that when urban areas are continue to be developed at the end of the day, when this continue to attract people from rural areas to migrate to urban areas, which we're trying to actually overcome at this point? Now, they come and tell us that actually government is in place or is capable to develop these areas, and at the end of the day, people in urban areas don't have to face the problems like pollution, don't have to face problems like congestion, traffic, and all that, and everything as they characterize. But in our characterization, we tell you that both urban and rural areas are facing problems, which may not be similar, but at the end of the day, all people in these areas deserve the right or the chance to live in better conditions at the end of the day. So if government is actually emphasizing the need to develop people in urban areas as though these are the only people that deserve a better living, then we shall not actually achieve sustainable development at the end of the day. Because even in their case, they come and tell us that actually rural areas are actually the areas where people are actually carrying out agriculture, they're providing, they're actually, they're contributing on the economy at the end of the day, which is a very good point for them. But then, these are the very areas that they want to neglect in the name of bettering urban areas so that people in the urban areas continue living a better life, which is actually okay. We're not against developing urban areas. But then, when we look at this, we see that in the end, their government is abandoning the rural areas at the end of the day. So what do we see? People in rural areas will continue migrating to urban areas because they're looking for these services that government continues to develop in the urban areas at the end of the day. So we don't solve the problem. Now, we have three arguments. The team that negative fails to actually engage about. One is sustainable living, which we already clarified earlier, that in the event that government that is capable of actually developing the country as a whole is only concentrating on developing people in urban areas because they're facing problems like congestion and traffic and pollution and all that and poor sanitation, that means sustainable development is not achieved at the end of the day. But in our case, where we're actually adopting policies that can promote reverse urbanization, this means that people can be attracted to move in rural areas, or people can be encouraged to remain in their rural areas because they improve service provision in rural areas. That means sustainable development is achieved, sustainable living is achieved at the end of the day. I'll take it.
Okay, what guarantee do you have that your policies are going to work, whereas previous policies that have been put into place didn't?
The guarantee that we have that our policies are going to work is that because the guarantee we have is that the policies that you're trying to bring up, the policies of developing urban areas, have failed in many ways because still now government continues to invest a lot in urban areas, but they have failed. So at this point, we believe our model will actually promote better sustainable development because your model has been failed and has been done and has been failed many times because we have seen where governments have invested in urban areas, but we continue to see that urban areas continue to promote pollution. There is a lot of congestion. I will not take you. Two is the continuity of ecosystems. Now, at this point in time, if we continue developing urban areas, but then we are abandoning the rural areas in the name of bettering the livelihoods of people in urban areas, we're not going to actually promote the continuity of ecosystems. But if we continue living if you continue encouraging people that wherever you are, you can actually live a good life, then it is going to be better to promote the continuity of ecosystems. How? They mentioned that in the rural areas is where we find majority of the resources, including food. Now, if we're actually promoting only the development in the urban areas, and then people are attracted to move to urban areas, what is that going to look like? People are going to abandon that land that they could have actually used to grow the food that is even provided in the urban areas. So what is that going to bring about? In the end of the day, we're going to see that hunger crisis continue to thrive in the country. Now, number three is we need to preserve cultures. Now, when we're preserving cultures, where actually people are actually only encouraged to transfer to urban areas, like in their case. Now, we need to preserve cultures in this manner. If we continue to promote policies that reverse urbanization, it's looking like areas at the end of the day. So that's going to look like the cultures in rural and urban areas are emphasized at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, even when they come and tell us that urbanization is not a significant problem like they mentioned in their first speech, we believe it's a significant problem because it's also, at the end of the day, posing danger to the ecosystems in the rural areas, because when we continue to develop urban areas, they continue to pose very significant harms like pollution to the entire atmosphere, whereby this atmosphere does not have boundaries from rural and urban areas. They also come and tell us the government is already having challenges in maintaining urban areas, so they would rather improve the urban areas again. So now if the government is having challenges with that, so why do we need to continue actually building up this problem at the end of the day? Because in their first speech, they come and tell us they would rather improve urban areas, which is very okay. But the question that we continue to pose for them on the table is, why are you leaving the rural areas that you are abandoning at the end of the day? Because you emphasize the need of people in urban areas to live a better life. It is okay, but what about the people in the rural areas? What are you doing for them? I'll take you.
So, Speaker, by this we mean to you that by promoting or fixing urban areas, we are allowing these people in rural areas to have a better life as they migrate. So how do you respond to that question?
Okay, thank you very much. This is exactly what we emphasize in our house, is that only promoting the livelihoods in urban areas is going to exacerbate that migration of people from rural to urban areas. What is that going to bring on table at the end of the day? We are going to see that the problems that you're trying to solve in urban areas are not solved at the end of the day. Because take for example, people are moving from rural to urban areas. What is it going to bring at the end of the day, even when services continue to be improved? Overpopulation, congestion, the problems that you claim to be solving at the end of the day, they're not solved. Because at the end of the day, people will continue to move to from rural to urban areas, but what is that going to bring on table? The problems are not solved. So if we encourage people to remain in rural areas by bettering the social services in the rural areas, we're not going to see these problems at the end of the day. Because everyone, wherever they are, be it rural or urban areas, they're going to continue living a sustainable life. So at the end of the day, Team Negative does not even actually give us any point to argue, because we believe that their case has a lot of irregularities. So at this point, they come and ask us questions that why would we interest people to live in villages? This is why we say that our policies are actually going to encourage people to stay in villages. How? Because we're going to, first of all, our policies involve bettering the livelihoods of people in villages. That will include improving the water supply, improving the network, improving the roads, improving all the social services at the end of the day. So at that point, we believe people will be attracted to live in rural areas. And what is it going to do? It's going to reduce the burden of government to try and actually sustain the livelihoods of people that are congested in urban areas. Now, dear judge, they tell us that rural areas have various problems, and that is why we come with a solution that actually solves problems all over, not actually concentrating on problems that only affect people in urban areas, because at the end of the day, these problems are going to exacerbate more problems because people in rural areas will continue wishing to live in the urban areas. We beg to disagree.
Okay, sorry for that. I'll be starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So panel, what we're noticing aside opposition is that both teams are trying to thrive for economic growth, right? We both have different ways that we do that, but at the end of the day, we all have one common goal. So now let's see which team best suits that goal, okay? First of all, we have side proposition coming here saying that they're going to adopt these policies, and they think that these policies are guaranteed to work. They think just because the ones in urban areas have failed, they think that people moving to rural areas automatically creates jobs because now there's people there. They think that unemployment is solved if people move to rural areas. First of all, unemployment exists for a lot of reasons, but the main reason isn't just because people live in urban areas. The main reason is that people don't have the access to things like proper education, right? But we say, rather than us starting all over in a rural area, we improve what we already have, right? What we're noticing from side proposition is that they're neglecting urban areas. They are saying, no, we should forget about these urban areas and we should build the rural areas. We should start all over again. Well, we're telling you that that isn't practical, because at the end of the day, there's still people that are going to live in those urban areas. If we continuously focus on the rural areas, it creates a strain on the government in the sense that they've been providing all these services and they've been struggling. They've been struggling to provide services for urban areas, but side proposition still lives in a world where the government that struggles to provide service delivery will automatically, magically just be able to do that just because, well, now people are living in rural areas. We don't necessarily understand how that exists. We don't necessarily understand how that comes into play to the point where now that there's people living in rural areas, the government suddenly has money to provide all that service delivery, or the government suddenly has resources to provide all that service delivery. Therefore, their point on how they magically aim to improve these rural area service delivery already falls, because we've shown you that even because in their world they're not considering every possible outcome that could come into play, or they're not considering the fact that the government already can't provide for urban areas. So how do you expect them to split those little services that they can barely provide to the rural areas again? We don't necessarily understand what you're saying there. Next of all, we speak about, so with that we were able to kind of show you how the government's strain and how the government will be strained by this. But anyways, let's move to the policies, right? Side proposition lives in their heads. They think that these policies are going to be efficient because just because they are being done in rural areas. Well, we at side opposition tell you, well, no. In general, policies always have loopholes. Policies always have people that are trying to combat them, right? We see this not only in the urban areas, but also with South Africa and the BEE commissions, right? Where policies were put into place to combat the fact that all these corporate jobs don't have enough people of color in them, right? And so government said that if you introduce people of color into your corporate jobs, we'll give you this amount of money. But then you had things like nepotism, and then you had things like people trying to combat the system, right? What I'm trying to show you by telling you this is the fact that people are always trying to find loopholes in policies, right? It's not because they are in urban areas that they didn't work, but it's because people are constantly trying to find loopholes in policies, and therefore we don't have a guarantee that their policies are going to work. What else can I use to elaborate on this? Well, I can tell you that these tax incentives and these tax incentives that they claim will work, right, could still exist, could not exist, because at the end of the day, people that that are unemployed and that lack education would be moving to these rural areas, and they still wouldn't be able to get jobs because they don't have the correct qualifications to do so. Which also shows you how we as side opposition combat that problem. We are saying, rather than us focusing on the rural areas and the urban areas, which creates a strain on the government, it would be better for us to focus on what we already have, right? The government has already been trying to provide RPPs. The government has already been trying to improve education. But rather than leaving that halfway and going to the rural areas and putting all our education, our attention on the rural areas, it would be better for us to improve what we have right here. It would be better for us to work on the government providing RDP houses. It would be better for us to work on the government being able to improve education in South Africa. With that being said, I've already shown you how these policies of side proposition aren't going to work, because at the end of the day, the problem with the policies isn't where they've been placed. The problem is the people that are going to be affected by these policies, because there will always be loopholes that society is able to find. With that being said, I'd like to share a point of information from side proposition.
Thank you. In your world, you keep saying that the government can act like at the moment, the government cannot actually provide for those in urban areas. So actually, how do you expect it to improve the urban areas if in your world, actually, it cannot provide for those in urban areas at the moment?
Well, how do you expect it to improve the rural areas if it can't provide for the people it already has? If it can't solve the problems it already has, why are you trying to give it more problems? That makes no sense. That is impractical, and that just brings more problems for our near future. Now, moving forward, right? Side proposition is failing to understand that these. So, with that being said, my rebuttals that I've given have already dealt with majority of side proposition's case, because I've told you that the policies that they've provided aren't reliable, and the fact that all their solutions that are bringing just add strain to the government. Because at the end of the day, we have to realize that there are a lot of developing countries that would not be able to cope with reverse urbanization if they can't even cope with urbanization. Yeah, now here's why the solutions that side opposition brought are way better, right? Now, first of all, we have to realize that with these solutions, the government is able to, this was also spoken by, okay, sorry. I would now like to continue to my team summary. with that being said, right, my first speaker spoke about how the urban areas are struggling. Side proposition continues to neglect the urban areas, neglect the fact that they also need development, and neglect the fact that development would exist in a better way in the urban areas, right? They've also said that moving people to rural areas will create jobs, but they haven't even elaborated on how that creates jobs. Just because me, I'm a teenager, or me, just because me, I'm above the age of 18 and I move to the rural area doesn't mean I'll automatically have a job, right? Now, moving forward, my first speaker spoke about how urban areas are struggling and they should get the attention, because at the end of the day, dividing the government's attention would just create more strain on their shoulders, right? The government would have more to deal with, and they would be very under pressure, and therefore we don't want to promote policies that adopt policies that promote reverse urbanization, because those policies would just create extra strain on the government that we have. Right? Now, moving forward to my second speaker's summary, right? So my second speaker spoke about how it would be straining in rural areas, right? So as said before, the rural areas are already suffering. That's a common ground that both teams were able to get to, right? We were both able to establish the fact that both rural areas and urban areas are suffering, right? But what side proposition hasn't noticed is the fact that if we continuously promote reverse urbanization, the government won't be able to supply different services for the rural areas, because they are already struggling with what they have right now. If they can't provide for the urban areas, how do you expect them to magically be able to provide for everyone else? So with that being said, panel, side-by-side opposition, because we have shown you how realistic side proposition's plan is, how reliable their policies are, and obviously the best solution for their